I was thinking about some of the Vultology discussions that have been going on lately, and I thought I would make a video and share some of my thoughts. One of the main concerns with Vultology is that there's a lack of scientific connection. The connections between the mind and the body is dubious at best, very speculative. And from a scientific point of view, I agree. I think the solution to that problem is simply that we want to connect our intuitions and the concepts that we have. We want to connect it as best we can to establish scientific literature. Ideally, we want to pull concepts that have been peer-reviewed, models that have been peer-reviewed, so we have something firm to build upon, something that can integrate with other science, making it all the more secure. Furthermore, we want to have a way to empirically measure the cognitive functions as well as the Vultology signals, at least in principle. Otherwise, it's never going to be respected as a real science. So if we want it respected as a real science, we're going to have to do that. One of the main concerns that I have with Vultology is that I think it's solely treated as the Vultology signals are solely treated as a signal of a computational process in your mind. I think it's also vital to understand that Vultology is inherently social. When you communicate with other human beings, that's when you're going to display the Vultology signals. If you're just thinking alone, are you really showing that many signals? The Vultology signals, whether with real people, real physical people, or in my case, imagined people on the other side of the screen, Vultology is an inherently social process. And I think cutting out the social dynamics, the social layer, is cutting out way too much. We want to have an understanding of not only the individual, but also the collective as well. So far we need to have an established connection with scientific literature. We want to empirically measure the cognitive functions. We also need to understand that we need to incorporate the social dynamics, the individual as well as the collective. And how do we do that? Well, one of the ways is with what's called coordination dynamics. Coordination dynamics is really interesting, and I'll make a whole bunch of videos explaining it. But here's an example to get started. If you wag your fingers as fast as you can and you try and do it in a random way, if you increase the speed, you start slowly, you can make it as random as you want. You can do it for a while, but once you increase the speed, at a certain point, it either locks into what's called in phase or what's called anti-phase. Okay? So at that certain critical threshold, it kind of locks into one of the two modes. That language, when it comes to these oscillations, can be used to model not just the Vultology signals, whether your head is in coordination with your hand. You can also model the oscillation patterns in your mind, as well as the oscillation pattern between the communicators in a given group. So you can understand the dynamics of the communication patterns in a group and what signals correspond to those dynamics. Intuitively, I think we all understand that a lead JE is going to have more influence when it comes to pushing out information, whereas a JI or a PI often enough will more likely just be listening, at least in comparison to, and taking information in comparison to the lead JE. We can model these dynamics with coordination dynamics and better understand how these oscillations happen. So, yeah, established scientific literature, empirical measurements, as well as a framework to understand not just the voltology signals, but also how those signals coordinate with your mental processes is a big step forward for Vultology if one is so inclined to want to take it in that direction. And yeah, so those are some of the thoughts that I have with regard to those conversations that have been going on lately. Thanks a lot.